to which the manager turned to Caitlin laughing and said, "I guess you're stuck now." Far not.
Caitlin never showed up for her other job. At David's Bridal. People began to worry.
I kept texting her, no response, no response. I call her, no response. I have nothing in mind. She would never just leave. She's too pragmatic. She would never just take off and go somewhere. I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. I just want to find Caitlin and celebrate her birthday with her and go to Red Lobster like she was planning. That's all I want to do.
Police say there's no evidence of foul play. Reporting live tonight in Fairfield, Karen Johnson, News 5.
Gosh, her fiancé sounds so desperate, Karen. Anything missing from Caitlin's home?
Nope, just her and her cell phone, which police have not been able to trace. But one other thing I wanted to mention, they believe she was last seen wearing a gray shirt, so that's something people out here are also looking for, a gray shirt.
Her phone had so far not been found, so they focused on data from her phone provider. Texts were sent from her phone to John's from 11:04 p.m. to 11:36 p.m. But just as he had said, there was nothing after that. At 12:06 a.m. her phone had either been turned off, or the battery had died, or the SIM card was removed. That was where everything went cold. Police interviewed the manager of GE Credit Union in Fairfield, who said Caitlin had come into the union 3 weeks before her disappearance. July 20th, 2011, she was with John's mother. Caitlin had told the manager she wanted to apply for a credit card and John's mom would co-sign for it. The manager said John's mom joked, "I'll co-sign for the visa, but you've got to take my son to Colorado with you," to which the manager turned to Caitlin laughing and said, "I guess you're stuck now." The manager remembered that Caitlin didn't laugh back. She seemed somber and more serious. It felt like perhaps the credit card was not her idea. That being said, the card was not set up in the end and nothing else came of it. Another person also told police he was with Caitlin and John on the night of August the 13th, and that the three of them had smoked some weed and, quote, discussed Caitlin and John's plans to move to Colorado within the next few months. The witness said Caitlin was on her laptop working on schoolwork. She didn't move from the couch and, in his words, seemed distant and not her typical bubbly self. He left her townhouse at around 10:45 p.m, leaving her and John alone. He said it was the last time he had seen Caitlin, and nothing really stood out apart from her being a bit quiet. He also didn't recall seeing any scratches on John at that time, but he admitted it was also entirely possible he wasn't even paying attention enough to remember. Polygraph tests are of course not admissible and cannot be used in court, but the witness did offer to take one, which indicated he gave truthful responses. In the overnight hours between August 13th and August 14th, a couple of teenagers who had snuck out told police they had seen two cars driving from the direction of Caitlin's house, with their headlights off, but they seemed to be the only people to have seen anything, and apart from that, the police really had nothing to go off.
Caitlin Markham, the woman missing from Fairfield.
21-year-old Caitlin Markham.
Family and friends are all searching for a missing 22-year-old.
Caitlin was about to graduate in September.
Markham disappeared in August of 2011.
Volunteers spent days searching for Markham in the woods in and around her Fairfield home.
So many unanswered questions about the disappearance.
Before long, Caitlin's case was national news. The case had really shocked Fairfield. It was a community of about just over 40,000 residents, and violent crime was very rare. Vigils, rallies, TV appeals, and volunteers were out all hours of the day and night. It was a huge search and a huge mystery. Even a national mounted search group from Texas conducted dozens of searches, combing through the local parks, waterways, old train tracks, and areas in neighbouring counties. Caitlin's family were making every plea they could and were regular faces in the local media, as was her fiancé John.
I keep believing that if she is somewhere in the worst case scenario, that she fights her way out. I keep wanting to believe that because she's strong. I know she's strong.
There were most definitely still some eyes on John, but he was adamant he had nothing to do with anything.
Fairfield police didn't take much when they searched Caitlin's fiance's house. Tonight he says he gave consent. He's doing whatever he can to help, even though he feels as if the entire community is pointing fingers and placing blame on him.
I really did not want this to get this far. I really wish that she would have been home by now, you know. I wish this could have been just a party for her being home instead of what it is, you know. People are going to say what they're going to say. You can't stop them.
23-year-old John Carter may not be able to stop the comments, but he can certainly make sure that people know how he feels.
I'm not going to acknowledge the ridiculous things that people are saying because I know, I mean, nobody's going to know about me. They don't know me, and I know me. I know that I would never hurt Caitlin, ever, in a million years.
Fairfield police have little evidence and no suspects.
That's pretty much it. There's nothing, and it's horrific.
Carter felt the animosity towards him when he was confronted while passing out flyers.
I guess he didn't know who I was, and he was just like, I heard the boyfriend did it, and I was just like, I'm the boyfriend. I would never do anything to hurt her.
And while the days without Caitlin continue, he finds comfort in her cat Ramsey and her artwork.
A short while later, it was Caitlin's 22nd birthday, but there was no time to focus on how sad that day felt. It was still all hands on deck. At this point, to the frustration of Caitlin's family, the Fairfield police were still saying there was no indication of foul play. John spoke very fondly of their relationship and said he missed his fiancée more than he could express, but a friend of Caitlin's said that maybe all was not as it had seemed. Caitlin had confided in her that she was feeling unhappy and trapped and had been for about 6 months. She said that she was sick of his heavy drug use and watching pornography. Things were so bad she admitted she was no longer attracted to him or interested in intimacy, and she was uncomfortable with the kinds of sexual activity John asked her to engage in. He could be jealous and possessive when Caitlin even spoke to other men. The more everyone started sharing stories, it was becoming clearer that Caitlin had well and truly reached the end of the line with their relationship and wanted to move on. John wasn't changing, and she couldn't justify his possessive and mean behaviour anymore. She also felt uncomfortable with John's mom being so involved with everything and felt things like the credit card was her way of trying to force them to stay together, despite her knowing she wasn't happy. Was it possible she was feeling so trapped she had just wanted to escape? No way, her family said. Not without telling someone something or asking for help. Caitlin was a problem solver and shared everything. The same friend also remembered that just days after she was reported missing, John had referred to her in the past tense several times, which had stood out as odd. But in June 2012, things briefly shifted and their attention was on someone else. 26-year-old Gurpreet Kang had lived right across from Caitlin. He was accused of sexually assaulting a Miami University student, and police wondered if he might have had something to do with Caitlin's case. But after an intense look at him and his whereabouts on that night, Fairfield police ruled him out and they were back at square one. It had now been almost 2 years since she had vanished. Everyone was still keeping her name alive in the media. The reward for information was still growing. And John Carter and Caitlin's family seemed very united. But on April 7th, 2013...
And tonight a major discovery and one of the tri-state's most talked about unsolved...
In a remote wooded area in Indiana, the course of the investigation would take a turn. Human bones were found wrapped in a black plastic construction sheet. Through dental records, they were able to confirm that they were the remains of Caitlin Markham. This was 30 miles away from her home.
Authorities have identified the remains of Caitlin Markham, the woman missing from Fairfield. Her remains were discovered Monday in Cedar Grove, Franklin County, Indiana, on Big Cedar Road.
Well, Clyde, it's certainly not the outcome anybody here in Fairfield was hoping for. And tonight, friends and family of Caitlin Markham know she won't be coming home.
I was just, digging through this little area here, picking up some metal, and here found a jawbone right on the other side of that little tree right there. Right between them two little trees.
At his house, Hicks provided more details about his grisly discovery. He described his call to police after he found Caitlin's remains.
I picked it up and I said, "That's not no animal." And I hung in a tree and went and called the cops. And, they sent us to the DNR. DNR says, "Well, what makes you so sure it's a human jawbone?" And I said, "Well, it's got all its teeth and it's shaped just like mine."
Her skull was found separately inside a tied-up plastic bag. There was very little soft tissue, decomposition fluid, or staining inside the bag. The medical examiner said this indicated that her head had not decomposed in the bag, but that it was placed inside after the head had already undergone significant decomposition. The bones had not been buried, they had been dumped with trash piled up on top. There were some cutting wounds on her left wrist, caused by sharp force trauma. The wound was described as a V-shaped incision that shaved off a layer of the bone, and it was caused by an object. But apart from that, there was nothing to piece together what had actually happened to her. Although her cause of death was not able to be confirmed, they could determine it was a homicide. Her phone was not found nearby. Caitlin's funeral could finally be held. Her art lined the walls and everyone wore bright colours. Many gave speeches, including John.
We would have had our kiss. We would have had our marriage. We would have had our honeymoon. We would have our kid. And we would have our life. And we would grow old together.
Carter's cousin says she considers herself lucky to have called Caitlin family.
Whenever I think of her, I just think of this smile and this artwork, and she was just a colorful human being. She meant well to everybody. Everybody was a friend.
Dave said although this gave them some sort of closure, he was just so sad for Caitlin's younger sister Ali, who was just 15 when her sister disappeared. Some days I get so consumed with Caitlin, her baby sister lost such an important role in her life, he said. Where she had been found presented so many challenges, on top of an already tough case. Her remains were in a different state, and they did not think she was originally put there. Both sets of police teams needed to come together. The start of 2015 began the same as the two previous years, quietly and with little movement. The reward for information was now sat at $75,000. But sadly, with the passage of time, Caitlin's case was losing steam.
3 years, and the question still remains. Who killed 22-year-old Caitlin Markham?
Dave, Caitlin's father, successfully lobbied the Butler County Sheriff's Office to re-examine the case, and the investigation changed hands from the Fairfield Police Department to the Butler County Sheriff's Office. Things had slowed down to such a point, Dave needed fresh eyes and a new approach. He was so scared that his daughter's murder would become a cold case, and he just could not face that prospect. Dave also contacted a private investigator, J. Ryan Green, and he made his way into Caitlin and John's inner circle, interviewing more than a dozen people. 5 of them, excluding John Carter, agreed to take polygraph tests. From this, he narrowed down his investigation to 2 people. He said subject 1 took a polygraph and failed the polygraph in epic proportion per the polygraph examiner. A documentary called Taken Too Soon, the Caitlin Markham story, was also shown at a Springdale movie theatre in the hopes of gathering new leads. Towards the end of 2016, the police announced that they now had a person of interest, but they did not have enough to make an arrest or name them. The private investigator also shared the same view about the exact same person. We now flash forward to 2023, 12 years after Caitlin went missing, and finally the investigation started to pick up pace. The police announced their first arrest.
Could you wind back for me? I do know there's a warrant for you, but I'm not sure exactly what it's for. So they'll be able to explain all that stuff to you when we get there.
A man named Jonathan Palmerton, and he was charged with perjury. Whoever's investigating this now is on the right track. They've got momentum and they have something that would allow a judge to sign off on a search warrant, said Private Investigator Green. Green said Caitlin, John and Jonathan were part of the same circle of friends and knew each other well. He lived close to her too, and John was his best friend. In fact, when John had gone to her house the morning she was reported missing, the first person he had called was Jonathan. Prior to Jonathan Palmerton's arrest, investigators had executed search warrants on 2 separate properties, one where he lived in 2011, the same time Caitlin went missing, and the other was where John Carter had lived at the time with his mother.
Fairfield man accused of lying during the course of Caitlin Markham's death investigation will now face a judge tomorrow.
In the meantime, we're learning new details about his involvement in the case and when prosecutors say he actually committed perjury.
A new timeline starting to become public in the 12-year investigation into the disappearance and death of 21-year-old Caitlin Markham. According to the indictment, on April 21st, 2022, Palmerton lied under oath. Court records show he was indicted almost 6 months later in October. The indictment remains sealed until now.
Jonathan and John Carter were also close to a man named Michael Strauss. A person we've spoken about before on this channel when we covered the case of Ellie White. Michael Strauss pleaded guilty to stalking and murdering Ellie and was sentenced to 17 years to life. Police had been looking at Michael, especially after he made admissions that Ellie was not the first person he had killed. But although there were some links between Caitlin's case and Ellie's, they eventually ruled Michael Strauss out. There was still one person that they kept coming back to after all this time.
Hi, my name is John Carter. My fiance is missing. I can't find her anywhere.
John Carter. Since her remains had been found, John had very much kept out of the media. He was now 36 years old, married and a father. But investigators over the last couple of years especially had gathered a lot of circumstantial evidence against him. His stories had just never made sense, and what he said didn't add up. Over the years, Dave's suspicions had grown too. The 2 cars the teens had reported seeing driving away from Caitlin's that night were determined to be John's and an unknown vehicle. Both his and Caitlin's phones went dark at around the same time on the night of August the 13th, 2011. And they had also discovered numerous text messages between John and Caitlin between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8:36 p.m. that had been deleted from John's phone, and some texts he claims he sent he never actually did, like his good morning text, for example. John had voluntarily participated in 3 polygraph tests, all of which had showed deception. One in September 2011, one in February 2014, and the final one in January 2021. During his final polygraph, the expert said he specifically showed deceptive responses when asked whether he had disposed of Caitlin's body on Big Cedar Road. The search warrant of his mother's home that was executed saw more than a dozen items seized. This included notes on the investigation, a folder containing Caitlin's school papers, an SD card, and poetry about death and killing. Some of the writings had his name on them, one of which read in part, "Deep down I love her. You ought to kill her, but I love her. She must die. I can't kill her. Yes, you can. No, yes. How do you talk me into all these things? I'm just that good. But you're bad. I know. How do I kill you? You can't. You're right. About what? Nothing." They also found what they believed was the same material Caitlin's body had been initially wrapped in, and where she was found was just a short way away from a farm owned by the Carter family. Many witnesses had come forward to speak on John's volatility and aggressive nature. A video of him screaming at his current wife holding their child.
Yo, volume's low. I put it up.
You go ahead and do whatever the you want. Yeah, you pushed the over my button.
I appreciate you, bro.
I want you to stop acting like a
And when detectives put some of the evidence
Can you hear it? Is it better now?
Reaction, pointing out it was all circumstantial, an odd choice of phrasing, they thought. Despite his years of denials and pleas for his fiance's safe return, there was now a lot stacked against him. And although they knew it was resting on circumstantial evidence and not DNA or physical evidence, they felt good about presenting it to the district attorney.
They're coming out the front. He's in custody.
2-5. Greatly appreciate it.
Happy to help.
You want the watch too? Yeah, that's it too. Forest Park. You got nothing else on you?
Awesome, bro. How you doing, man? I'm excited for tomorrow, bro. It's gonna be magnificent. I'm telling you, I already took photos of it. Beautiful stuff, man. Like you'll see, like the clouds. Like the last time I went. Oh, let me pause this.
The 36-year-old was a
The last time I went, there was a cloud, bro. It was literally red and blue, like deep red, deep blue, and it looked like a mouse playing the piano. Like I kid you not, bro. I'm telling you, you'll see the clouds and they'll tell so many stories and it'll look so cool. It'll be so much stuff to paint.
arrested at his place of work and charged with 2 counts of murder. One count was purposely causing Caitlin's death on or around August 13th or August 14th, and the second murder count alleges he caused her death on the same dates as the proximate result of committing or attempting to commit a violent felony offence. John posted a $1 million bond and, as a condition of his bond, had to wear a GPS monitor. Jonathan Palmerton was also released pending a trial. John Carter pleaded not guilty at his arraignment and a trial was scheduled for June 2024. Jonathan Palmerton was also scheduled to appear in court charged with perjury, however his charge was later dismissed. The prosecution subpoenaed more than 50 people. In June 2024, Caitlin's disappearance and murder had been shrouded in mystery for more than a decade. And, after a decade of John denying everything, he changed his plea.
Your Honor, he did, and Mr. Carter, if we may on his behalf, John Carter stipulates that he committed the offense of involuntary manslaughter consistent with Ohio Revised Code 2903.04B. That is a felony of the 3rd degree. Specifically, that on the date specified in the indictment, he did cause the death of Caitlin Markham by the commission of a misdemeanor in the city of Fairfield, Butler County, Ohio.
Dave said it was an out-of-body feeling. He had felt something in his gut about John for a long time, and he said although it was good to know he wasn't going crazy, he was right. It made him so angry that John had lived for 12 years thinking he had got away with everything.
We knew all along who it was. You just got to be able to grab it. And just proud.
An emotional day in Butler County Court this morning as John Carter pleads guilty, admitting to causing the deaths of his fiancée.
It's always the husband, man. Always the husband.
And cried with Dave, joined in with the searchers, all knowing full well what had happened.
You staring the man that took your daughter's life. Oh my God.
He simply muttered, "I cannot." One inmate told detectives that John had in fact revealed how he had killed Caitlin, although John never admitted this in court, and detectives have never heard this version from his mouth.
They broke into an argument. He said before he knew it, he had her pinned down to the ground. He was on top of her, and he choked her. And then after he choked her, he said he was panicking, and he said he didn't know what to do. He was going to call the cops. He didn't want to call the cops. He said he made it look like it was a...
What the hell?
So he cut her wrist.
Although everyone knew the sentencing would be far less, no one was prepared for just how little it would be.
The court imposes the following sentence. Based upon the serious nature of this offense and the factors that have previously been indicated, that anything short of the maximum sentence would demean the seriousness of the offender's conduct and its impact upon the victim, and therefore will impose a definite term of incarceration of 36 months.
36 months?
3 years in prison, which was the maximum possible for involuntary manslaughter.
What?
This sentence will be followed by 3 years of released control. A detective that worked the case
Oh
said,
my
I've interviewed from
God.
homicides to rapes down to trespassers, 1,000 people, and I've never interviewed a psychopath. And that's what I said when John left. I said that's the first psychopath I've ever interviewed.
I'm sick, bro. This man took a woman's life.
Either, but police and prosecutors had their suspicions about a second person working with John to dispose of her body. and even possibly dismember her. Although Caitlin's family finally had their answer about who was responsible, they still do not know the full story about what happened, and probably never will.
That is why there's no closure. I still do not know the whole story. And not that I would have believed him, because he's lied for 13 years, but he's offered no explanation, hasn't even tried. And
Them boys who got CTE?
that just, to me, that just shows his character.
What was you talking about?
No, I don't. And even if he writes a confession in prison, he's going to have to be more convincing than he's been the past 13 years.
And in a short while, John will be out of prison and back to living his life. Even though the
Crazy.
maximum sentence was given and the judge's hands were tied, the lack of justice for Caitlin is quite staggering and very, very sad. 14 years after she was last seen, butterflies for Caitlin Markham was held at a park close to her house. Trees were planted and everyone wore things with butterflies on. It was a day filled with art and colour, just what Caitlin loved. Dave said he could be reminded once again that he's not in this alone.
So bright and happy, exuberant, friendly, outgoing. And she liked butterflies, and I don't know, there's been days that I've had bad days in the early on times, and the butterfly would come and fly around me, and I'm like, oh, hi, baby. She was bright, vibrant, coming out of her shell, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly.
He said living with such a loss and still not knowing what actually happened was all-consuming. Not a day goes by that I do not think of Caitlin. I do not feel 3 years is justice, not for Caitlin, not for her sister, not for me, her friends,
No,
or the
it's
entire
not.
community that has ached and grieved alongside us. I often wonder what she'd be doing with her art and her career. She would be an amazing woman, she had a talent and she was going to go someplace. I'll see a picture of art sometimes and I'll think, that should be Caitlin's up there. Thank you all for tuning in.
Wrong
If you'd
layer.
like to support our channel and help us to continue to make content, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. It helps us so much and we really appreciate it.
$36 is crazy. Like genuinely, man. Oh, it shouldn't be that bright. Forgot it's going down. Yeah, 36 months is crazy, man. That's sickening. Next, that was crazy, man. 36 months, man. Oh, I'm sick to my stomach.
Lived in Neptune City. The small coastal town of Neptune City in New Jersey, December 3rd, 2016, 2:46 a.m.
911, where is the emergency? Not emergency. Actually on the Belmar Bridge, right after heading south in the middle of the bridge, there's a car that's abandoned. It's off to the side of the road, but... The Belmar Bridge being the 35 bridge? Yeah, the 35 bridge would be going from north going south. Into Belmar? Into Belmar, yeah. Right. Hey, did you pass the midpoint? Because up to the midpoint is Neptune, and after the midpoint is Belmar.
Bro, why can't I see the cursor?
It was after... It looked like it was more on the Neptune side. So what kind of car is it? Kind of looks like an old beat-up, light tan-colored, sedan. And what was your name, sir? So if it's okay, I'd just rather be anonymous. And this is your cell number? Yeah, I'm driving Uber and Lyft tonight, so I just figured I'd give a call in, because it's kind of hard to see, I think, if you're coming the other way. And was there anybody inside the vehicle? I looked, no. Okay. Unless they were sleeping. I couldn't see them by their head being up. Nobody looked like they were in it. All right.
Neptune Township Police headed to the Belmar Bridge along Route 35. They did indeed find an abandoned car there, a 1994 Oldsmobile 88. The keys were still inside, the door unlocked, but it was empty. It wasn't damaged, so there definitely hadn't been an accident, nor had it been broken into. Police ran the number plate and determined that it was registered to a Lillian Stern, but she was not the main driver, it was actually her granddaughter, 19-year-old Sarah Stern. Some of the detectives even knew Sarah, they knew her whole family. The community was just that small and close. To find her car like this was worrying.
You put me out with New Jersey registration. Just started to tow out.
The car was right on the side looking over the water, and there was a worrying thought that she or whoever was in the car had jumped. A dive team started searching the Shark River below, but it was just too dark, so they had to wait until sunrise. The concern was that if someone was in the river, the currents would likely have swept them away pretty quickly, heading for the Atlantic Ocean. It wasn't very deep, but it was fast and freezing at this time of year. The police called Michael Stern, Sarah's dad, who was in Florida at the time. He hadn't heard from his daughter all day and had tried to get hold of her a few hours before to say goodnight. He told police to contact her best friend Liam and his mum Megan. Maybe she was staying with one of them. With a million things racing through his mind, Michael set off on a 17-hour drive from Florida to New Jersey. His daughter, 19-year-old Sarah, was an aspiring artist.
Dang, why they all artists? It's kind of scary.
It had been a tough choice between art and sports as she played softball and was on the swim team, but she decided to study art and TV production at college. She was a frequent face at the various film and arts festivals and conventions, was always out taking photographs, and loved painting the windows of the local schools for the holiday seasons. Safe to say, if it was creative in any way, Sarah wanted to be involved. She referred to herself as a reckless optimist, something one of her friends would say was a spot-on description. Going into things head first and always looking on the positive side, even when things didn't go her way. Sarah lived in Neptune City with her father and grandmother. She was an only child, and sadly her mother Carla had passed away from cancer a few years before. Carla had run a bookstore for 25 years and loved travelling, both of which inspired Sarah's creativity and love of seeing new things. As devastating as their loss was, Michael and Sarah were now closer than ever.
Can you see if we have any contact info for the RO? try to give them a phone call before the took it.
Police towed the car and went to Sarah and Michael's house just before 3:30 a.m.
Hello? Hello? Neptune City Police? Hello? Neptune City Police, hello?
Let's check down here first.
Weirdly, the lights were all on, and the back door was unlocked. It was eerily quiet as they entered, and it was totally empty. They soon found out that although Sarah lived with her grandmother, she hadn't been at the house since Michael went to Florida, as she was feeling unwell and staying with a family friend. So by all accounts, it was just Sarah and her dog Buddy in the house at the time. More worryingly still, they found Buddy locked in his cage. Buddy was the little love of her life, and friends said it was rare that he would ever be in his cage. He was often just roaming around the house wherever he wanted, and wherever Sarah went, she took Buddy too. Someone had put him in there and locked it, and it didn't look like it was Sarah. They spoke to the Stearns' neighbour, Robin, and she said there was no way she would have upped and left without anyone to look after Buddy. The fact he was there by himself without food was the biggest red flag. She did say that, oddly though, Sarah had come by her house earlier that day with one of her friends, Liam, to drop off a box of stuff she said belonged to her mother. Sarah had been boxing things up and dropping them at various people's houses. The reason why was unclear. Robin took the box in for her, but later when she texted Sarah, she got nothing back. The officers gave Buddy some treats and made sure he was safe while Michael was on his way back, and reported their findings back to the station. The search for Sarah Stern was now on. Given where they had found the car, the keys still being in there, none of her belongings around, and right over a river, they had to consider the possibility that maybe she'd jumped. But her dad said, no way. Sarah had definitely had a tough few years, but she was now more positive than ever for the future. She had big dreams, an amazing circle of friends, and nothing was getting in the way of her achieving what she wanted. Her list of upcoming plans was long. A local restaurant, Bruno's Pizza and Sub Shop, had reached out to her about painting a winter-themed mural on its window. At Christmas, she had plans to go to New York to watch a show on Broadway, and was set to go to bartending school so she could work at night and focus on her art during the day. The following summer, she was planning on moving to Canada permanently with her dog Buddy, to live with other family members. She had just bought a TV to give to her grandmother for Christmas, and she had a hovercraft on order for when she finally did move. She loved Canada and was frequently flying out there. It was a place she could see herself living forever, and the change was what she wanted. And looking at her short-term plans, she was going for dinner with a friend the following day, and had some art projects to be working on. Her dropping off the grid didn't make sense. It seemed that one of the people to last see Sarah was her old friend, 19-year-old Liam McAtasney, the same Liam that helped drop some bits off to Robin's house. They'd known each other since they were 6 and stayed very close since meeting in Sunday school all of those years ago. So close, in fact, they had even spoken about moving to Canada together. When Michael heard his daughter was missing, 2 of the people he first suggested they contact was Liam and his mum Megan. They hung out all the time, so there was a high chance he had heard something. Megan opened her door that morning to officers. When they said they couldn't find Sarah and were worried for her well-being, Megan said, "I'll call her, she'll answer for me." But her phone just went to voicemail, and her normally blue iPhone messages were being delivered as green. Megan told police where they could find her son, Liam. He only lived around the corner with 19-year-old Preston Taylor, another close friend of Sarah's. Preston had even taken her to junior prom. In fact, Liam, Preston and Sarah called themselves the Squad. It was just one of those friendship groups that everyone expected to see together all the time. Where one of them was, the other 2 would likely be not far behind. Despite the occasional jokes from other people about romantic relationships between them, it was nothing but a solid friendship group. Nothing romantic at all. Just the best of friends. In Sarah's yearbook, a page on her best friends section had a picture of Liam and Preston, and on Liam's Facebook page he listed Sarah in his family section. At 4 a.m, just a few hours after her car was called in, detectives showed up at Liam's apartment too.
Liam? You Liam? You got a second? Can I come in and talk to you real quick?
Yeah, no problem, officer.
Is Sarah here by chance?
No.
When was the last time you talked to her?
I was with her today.
What time?
Before I went to work.
So it was earlier today?
Yeah.
When was the last time you had any kind of contact at all with her? Turn some light on if you don't mind.
I mean, we went to get food today.
And you went to work at what time?
4:30.
Okay, so you haven't talked to her since 4:30? You have a cell phone you can reach out to her on?
I actually haven't been able to find my cell phone.
So you haven't been able to talk to her? You don't know where your cell phone is?
No.
Liam told them he had seen her the previous day, but he hadn't heard from her in the last few hours. He'd been at work, lost his phone, and then went to bed. He'd been at her house earlier that day, helping her move some things around. There were even 3 crates of her mother's belongings in his apartment. The pair had driven around for a bit and grabbed some lunch from Taco Bell at around 2:30 p.m, but then he left her to go to work at 4. Liam said that Sarah had recently confided in him that after her mum died, she had found a shoebox containing thousands of dollars of cash hidden in her family's second home. Inside was a note saying it was Sarah's inheritance. A lot of the cash was not in the best condition. It was old notes and some of it was stuck together. But the pair had talked for ages about how, if she could get that money accepted or into a bank, it could help her achieve her dreams of becoming an artist. Sarah's aunt confirmed this too, saying Sarah was keeping some of the cash in a fireproof box in her bedroom. The rest she had put into a safety deposit box at her bank. She was a little concerned when Sarah told her she'd revealed all of this to Liam, as they had agreed to not talk about it. It was a large sum of money after all, and it was best that she didn't make it obvious that she had it. But Liam was her most trusted friend, and he knew everything that went on in her life. They asked Liam why Sarah might want to disappear, and he said that despite what her father had told them about her positive state of mind and all of her upcoming plans, he saw things differently. He said that a few years ago she had made an attempt to take her own life, fueled by arguments with her dad and the death of her mom.
Keep looking for your cell phone, man, because we're trying to find Sarah. What was her mindset last time you talked to her?
I just know she's been trying to get away and told me she's going to Canada.
Trying to get away, okay. Canada, she's been real depressed lately?
Her dad is crazy.
Okay, and then she's dealing with the loss of her mother. Her dad's in Florida right now, right?
Her dad, yeah. He's coming back today, I guess.
Where's her grandma?
Grandma's actually sick.
Where's your grandma at right now? She's not at the house.
She's staying with some family member.
Maybe reach out to some friends, maybe hit our message on social media.
I definitely will.
Start reaching out to somebody, see if anybody's talked to her, or when they talked to her, what her mindset was and all that, all right?
Planning on getting a phone as soon as.
Okay.
Michael was confused and upset when he'd heard about this. He knew Liam and loved him. Why had he accused him of something so hurtful? Had things been trying for them, of course, but arguments? They hadn't fought at all. They had a great relationship, as did Sarah with his new girlfriend. They would text each other all the time and share everything. In fact, it was obvious from their text thread that the only day they hadn't spoken was that very day. It was also the only time her iPhone messages had been delivered as green when talking to him. She had never been reported missing before, never left Buddy unattended, and never been out of contact with people. Police did wonder though. Did Liam know where she was? Was he covering for his friend running away? He would likely have been the first person she had told anything to, and detectives had to wonder if he knew more. CCTV confirmed that they had both been at the Taco Bell for lunch, and a neighbour's security camera also showed the pair coming and going from Sarah's house all day. And Liam driving away to go to work that afternoon. He was picked up working his shift as well. Later that evening, however, a few hours before the police showed up at the bridge, at around 11:45 p.m, Sarah's car was spotted leaving her driveway. But there was no way of telling if it was her behind the wheel or not.
So that's the last time that there's any kind of recording or that anybody had seen her. We haven't heard that anybody saw her after that, and we just don't know what happened after that. We're trying to solve this by having the search. We just want to see if something happened over by that river, and we want to be able to get Sarah back. Coming out of the Shark River Marina area in Belmar and Avon, Shark River Hills and Neptune City, that area, and I think part of Wall Township too. So it encompasses a big area. It's a big stretch of water, and we're just trying to get as many people out there as possible to just see if we can uncover anything. Everybody that talked to her in the days leading up to that, she seemed just fine. So, and you know, it's a mystery. It's a mystery, and it's shocking, and it just takes my mind to another area, and I just know it's very depressing. It's very hurtful and sad, and it's not a feeling any parent or anyone should have with anybody that's close to them or any loved one. Where are you, Sarah? Give us a call. Come on home. Buddy's waiting for you. Buddy's her dog. She loves a dog, and I just don't understand why we haven't heard from her.
Liam was, by all accounts, still the last known person to have seen her that day, so on the afternoon of December the 3rd, they went back to see if there was anything he was neglecting to tell them. His story was the same. He'd met her for lunch, they'd hung out, and then had gone to work, leaving her at her house. He maintained that she wasn't in the best headspace and was keen to get out of New Jersey. Yes, everyone else was saying something different about her state of mind, but Liam had a special relationship with her. So, was his version of events the truth?
I've been friends with her since first grade, so we have a pretty good friendship.
What's going on? Just give me what's going on with her. Like, how's she been acting lately? The same? Different?
No.
Liam, you've known her since first grade, you said.
Yeah.
Has she been different than normal lately?
Well,
and for how long?
In the past, she has had a tendency to have self-destructive, suicidal behavior. I actually know that.
How long ago?
Years ago.
And what was it that she would be self-destructive and suicidal? Sorry.
It was over.
Stepping on you.
Over something her dad did. I'm not too sure because it was. I think it was my freshman year, sophomore year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my second year of college right now.
4 or 5 years ago.
But I remember being with my girlfriend. She was completely obsessed with my girlfriend. And something happened with her dad. My girlfriend had to leave to go take care of her because she was saying, "You don't come here right now, I'm going to kill myself."
So she's made comments like that in the past?
Yeah. Over the past few months, she's been telling me, how bad her relationship with her father is and how she just needs to get out of here.
Why was it bad? What made it bad?
Fighting.
Dude, if you know anything about where this girl is or had any contact with her, you need to let us know.
Believe me,
and exactly what it was that you had spoken to her about yesterday afternoon before you went your way and she went her way. You need to open up and let this detective know everything, man. Again, you know, Liam, we've said it a couple times. I'm going to throw it at you one more time, dude. We just want to make sure she's okay. Nobody's going to get in any trouble here. We just got to make sure that Sarah's all right.
Liam was cooperative and wanted to help as much as he could, and he volunteered to sit down for a recorded interview.
Is she in Canada? I couldn't tell you. I can honestly tell you that. I'm one of her closest friends, and I have no idea why she wouldn't tell me anything before she left. Like the last time I say goodbye to her, it was just like any other day. Like, see you later, I gotta go to work. Nothing. She didn't say anything.
Did she have her phone while you were there? Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw her phone. And you haven't been able to find her cell phone? I don't know if you guys can tell me that.
Do you know where her cell phone is?
No, I have no idea. But probably on her.
During the interview, he spoke more about Sarah having suicidal thoughts and the awful fights that she and Michael had allegedly been having. He was now calling Michael threatening and even accused him of stealing money out of her inheritance.
Do you know her family?
Yeah, I know some of her family.
You know her dad?
Mm-hmm.
What's her relationship like with her dad?
Not good. When her mom died, she had money that was supposed to go to her, and her dad took that from her. It's kind of been the big thing over the years that she's always said. The dad took money from her, dad took money from her. She definitely has some trust issues. Believe me, I've done nothing but just try to find out if there was any physical violence between her and her father. I've always been trying to get that out of her, and she's never told me.
Suddenly, he said something that changed the tone of the interview. Something odd.
One thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was if she did jump off the bridge, what are the odds that she's not somewhere all the way out in the ocean by now? And did she tell you she was going to jump off the bridge? No.
What a strange thing to ask, detectives thought.
If she had told me that she was going to jump off the bridge, there would have been no way that I could have gone to work that night. I went to work and I had one of the best nights of my life. I made a bunch of money. All my tables were good. I had a great time. It definitely, I would not have been able to do that if I knew something.
But before they could press him any more, they got word that his parents had contacted a lawyer on his behalf, who, of course, told him to stop talking. The interview came to an end. On the day she had vanished, cameras from Sarah's bank showed her coming in to withdraw $7,000 from the almost $23,000 in her safety deposit box. Liam had been with her in the car. This was around the same time that they got lunch at Taco Bell. So why only mention Taco Bell? He already told them about the inheritance, so why not just say she took money out? And as they knew, Sarah's car was spotted driving away from her house at 11:45 p.m, and although Liam was supposed to work until midnight that night, he actually clocked off at 10 p.m, meaning he did not in fact have anything to cover him for those few hours. The next person to talk to was Preston Taylor, Liam's roommate, and also Sarah's good friend. Preston was a lot less talkative than Liam, but he did confirm Liam's timeline and said that what his roommate told him was the same as what he'd told the officers. So what did he think happened to Sarah, they asked. Tearfully, he said he thought she had jumped off the bridge. Arguments with her dad, possible depression, still dealing with grief. There was a long list of things that might have driven her to this, he said.
Police are at your house, 4 o'clock in the morning. She's missing. You just find out that her car is found on the bridge. And now Liam is telling you that he was with her. You don't remember anything that he said to you? Am I understanding that correctly? Yeah. You have no recollection at all about what he told you he did with her? Did he say that he was at her house? Did he say that they went to the movies? Did he say that they went to the beach? What did he say they did?
If you did say anything, I missed it.
As detectives left the room, they turned to each other and shared a look. There was no doubt in their minds. Both Preston and Liam knew more than they were saying. They knew what happened to Sarah, and the police knew she had not jumped off that bridge. And why would she have run away and not taken anything with her, including the inheritance? It was not a secret that she'd wanted to move to Canada, so there was no need to do it all secretly.
Well, it's been a full week since 19-year-old Sarah Stern of Neptune was last seen, and now her family and friends are organizing a search party.
Family going to, if you will, take matters into its own hands, get a search party together.
It was now almost a week since Sarah had last been seen.
She's pretty strong, so hopefully we're going to find something today.
Both Liam, his twin brother Seamus, and Preston, along with almost 200 people, broke into groups and braved the near-freezing temperatures, searching for almost 12 hours each day. People were advised that they would be searching at their own risks due to the weather, but that didn't deter anyone. Divers had been searching the river for several days, but to no avail, and helicopters didn't spot anything either. When the river search came up empty, the New Jersey State Police Missing Persons Unit and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children joined in as well. But there was absolutely nothing, not a single clue anywhere. Time was ticking by, but finally they would get a break. A fellow student, Anthony Curry, had attended high school with Liam, Sarah and Preston. He was a budding young filmmaker, and he and Liam, a huge film buff himself, would often talk about movies together. Liam loved horror and coming up with ideas for plots. Anthony asked to talk to the police about a conversation he'd had with Liam just a few days before Sarah was reported missing. At the time, it hadn't stood out to him as anything, but the more he thought about it, the more bothered he had become by it. Liam said that he had come up with a plot about a man killing a woman by strangling her to death to steal some money she had recently found. After she was dead, the man asked his friends to help him dispose of her body by throwing her off a bridge. They would then make it look like she'd jumped. The pair would then bury the money in the park and return to it later and become rich. Anthony said Liam was really excited about the idea, grinning as he told him, bouncing around like an energetic kid. At the time, Anthony said it didn't really stick out. They always spoke about films, especially horror, and Liam could sometimes be, in his words, a little weird about things. However, what made it stand out was since Sarah went missing, Liam had reached out to him on Snapchat every single day, asking him to talk in person about something. Liam wanted to know if the police had spoken to him, and had they mentioned his name. This is when the plotline he'd mentioned suddenly came back into his head. Anthony thought about where her car was found on the bridge and wondered why, if Liam wasn't involved in any way with her disappearance, would he be worried? Snapchat is designed to automatically delete all one-on-one and group chat snaps after they have been viewed by the recipient, so it was also a little telling that he wanted all communication done via that app. Fortunately, as Anthony's suspicions had started to grow, he had taken photos of some of the messages on another phone. One message spoke about old and low-quality money, something police knew was the case with Sarah's inheritance. This was a big development, and Liam was clearly trying to open up to Anthony about something, so police asked Anthony to try and talk to him more, possibly admit to something small, or at least talk himself into more of a hole. Anthony agreed to help and asked Liam if he wanted to meet for a drive to get things off his chest. Detectives set Anthony up with a very well-hidden microphone and small camera in his car, and on January 31st at 11 p.m, Liam got in.
What's happening, bro? How you doing? How you doing? You want a cigarette?
No, I'm good. I quit them shits. I was smoking a lot of cigarettes while I was tripping.
Really?
Yeah. I tripped for like 2 months straight.
He was clearly paranoid and asked his friend if he could check him for a wire. Anthony agreed.
Dude, you can't blame me for doing this, right? I gotta feel you up real quick, alright?
You're good.
No disrespect.
I'll show you.
No disrespect, okay?
Nothing.
Yeah, I got the FBI on my ass, dude.
What are they questioning?
Oh yeah, a lot.
About what?
About killing Sarah.
What happened when Liam started talking left everyone stunned. It was far more than a small admission. He had murdered Sarah and had planned everything for months. The motive was purely to get his hands on her inheritance.
I pretty much hung her, I picked her up and had her just, dangling off the ground, and she just pissed herself, and
you lose control of your
said my name, and then that was it. And it took me a half an hour to kill her. I thought I was going to be able to choke her out and have her out in, a couple minutes. I choked her out, and then she was just laying there having a seizure or something. So then I got a shirt, and I just shoved it down her throat so she wouldn't throw up or anything, and held my finger over her nose and set a timer. That's the only time I had my phone, and it took me a half an hour after I hit start.
He said he had strangled Sarah at her home, so hard in fact he had lifted her off the ground and, in his words, pretty much hung her. Liam said he was worried that Sarah's dog would be a problem, but he just watched.
She goes to walk out the front door. I choke her out, drag her. My biggest problem was the dog, and her dog laid there and watched as I killed her. Didn't do anything. Her fucking dog. What kind of dog? Yeah, what kind of dog is that? It's like some...
Was it a big dog?
It looks like a beagle, but it's the size of a Great Dane.
Nobody was there? Grandma?
No, nobody was there. Even her dad wasn't there. He was in Florida. I have to leave. I fucking dropped my phone at Sarah's house. My phone was at Sarah's house.
Wait, you left your phone?
Yeah, I lost it, and I couldn't find it. I had to go to work. I had timed everything out so that...
Why did you take your phone? You should have left it in your fucking pocket.
Dude, What were you doing? Strangling someone. I couldn't find it, dude. It ended up being out in the driveway. Oh, it must have dropped at you. It must have dropped when I was crawling to get in the car.
Liam said he realised he needed help to get rid of Sarah's body, so he had asked Preston to help him. Preston, he said, knew all about his plan anyway. He'd already agreed to help in exchange for a $3,000 cut of the money, and likely more later when Liam had access to it.
I choke her out, drag her into the back, put her in a bathroom, and then I had to go straight to work. So Preston came over, took the body, put it in the bushes, and then I was at work. I had a full, night of work, except I left work a couple times, which looks sketchy. I look for my phone, though, which is a reasonable, thing to do. Yeah, you gotta look for your phone. Yeah, you can't. Which is kind of, me losing my phone was kind of a good thing, because the cops are like, oh, he's hanging out with her, he lost his phone, he's going back and forth between his house looking for it.
His coldness and arrogance as he recounted everything was astonishing. He frequently smirked and seemed genuinely quite proud of himself and his plan.
I had planned Sarah's situation for me to be interrogated by cops. That was whole part of my plan, to make me look not guilty. And the worst part is, we threw her off the bridge, and the body never showed up. It's probably frozen. It's probably all the way out in the ocean.
He was so fixated on money, literally nothing else mattered to him. Anthony sat and listened, knowing he had a job to do, but it took all of his energy to contain his horror of what he was hearing. Liam then drove to work and Preston went to Sarah's house to move her. Liam clocked off at around 10 p.m, and both he and Preston went and picked her up using her own car.
I get off work that night, go straight over. Preston and I go over to her house, take her safe, bring that over to my house before we do anything. Then we take her body out of the bushes and drag it over to her back fence, and I crawl, get into her car, and I back up. There's a security camera across the street, so I had to act like her. I watched her every time she backed out. She does the same thing.
They posed her in the seat as if she was just sleeping.
So I backed out exactly like she did and drove off. Put her in the trunk? No, I put her in the passenger seat of her own car. So I was driving, and I had her buckled in the passenger seat. So she looks like she's just sleeping. She's just sitting up. And my plan was, for me, I underestimated my own strength and how much a dead body would weigh. Because it's limp weight. Yeah. I got up on top of the bridge to throw her off. My plan was I was going to throw her off, run over, jump over the divider, and get into Preston's car. And I go up, open the door, unhook her, pull her out, start dragging her to throw her over, and then cars start coming up. I see headlights coming. I try to get her over, and I can't. Fuck my leg up. The weight from her body, made me fall, and my leg, went up. So now I'm limping, my leg's fucked up, and there's 3 cars coming up. So I grab her body. Dude, I had superhuman strength, and I threw it in the car, and I fucking picked it up, and her feet were up here, and her head was down there, and 3 cars go by. And I'm fucking losing my shit, because that easily could have been a cop. And then Preston comes over the bridge, goes around, makes a U-turn, comes up behind me. The 2 of us throw the body over, and then we're out. Oh, so you needed help? I needed help, yeah. She's not even that big of a girl, right? No.
Liam told Anthony that the killing had little effect on him. I don't feel any different, and I don't think about it. You always think you're going to try new things and you're going to change, he said. He then went on to complain about the money not being as much as he had hoped for, and the fact that some of it was damaged.
And that's not even the worst part. The worst part of it is, I thought I was walking out 50 grand, 100 grand in my pocket. She had one safe, and she took money out, and she only had 10 grand. And this money, I don't know if it was burnt or something. It's fucking old money, terrible quality. I don't even know if I can put any of it in the fucking bank.
Right, because it'll probably look sketchy, right?
Looks sketchy, and it'll look like it's Sarah's money, especially if it's a federal investigation.
Right.
If they're looking for the guy who has the fucking old money.
Right, because it's probably like the old dollar bills and shit. It's not like the new shits, because the $100 bills are changing now.
Exactly. Spent a lot of money, and I didn't even get a quarter of it.
Not having a body did not deter the police, and the next day, on February 1st, 2017, Liam and Preston were arrested in connection with the death of Sarah. To say that everyone was shocked at who was arrested was an understatement. If you had a model of a best friend group, then that was them, a classmate said. So I think that's why the whole community is confused, especially like people in our class. That friend group was literally inseparable. Whereas the once talkative Liam was now silent, the initially quiet Preston started talking, and he had a lot to say. He confessed to everything. It was true that Sarah and Liam had spoken about moving to Canada together, but Preston said it was far more manipulative than this. Liam had gone along with it, using her desire to relocate to his advantage, telling her she needed to take out money so they could finalise their plan to move there together. It was on the 2nd of December when the two went to the bank, where Sarah withdrew about $7,000 of the money that she had already locked away. They then returned to her house, and Liam callously killed her. Preston told the authorities where they could recover 2 buried safes in the park, one containing some of Sarah's inheritance, and another containing her clothing. In fact, when Liam was arrested, he had the key to one of the safes on him. Preston showed them around Sarah's house too, describing what he walked into, and what happened when they got to the bridge.
How was Sarah's body positioned in this bathroom?
She was sitting like this, tucked into the corner and leaning over the toilet.
Okay, and her feet were where?
Sticking out into the room. I grabbed her legs and got her over to the fence.
Okay, so you're carrying Sarah by her legs. Are her legs dragging on the ground, or are they up in the air?
I was like holding them up in the air.
And what part of Sarah's body was laying over?
Her torso.
Okay.
And we carried her over to this fence near the safe was. Hoisted her up and over. Threw the safe over. The two of us jumped over.
Okay. We're saying Liam had her
by the shoulders and hoisted her up onto the railing. And then I pushed her feet over so that she was going over the rest of the way. Right. As she went over, immediately after, her body was up and over the rail. As we were running back to my car, the black Mercury Mystique, we heard a loud metallic bang, and that was all.
Okay. Did you have any conversation with Liam about that noise that you heard?
No.
Liam unbelievably pleaded not guilty to everything. Preston, knowing what he was facing, thought differently.
Today, Preston Taylor, on the right of your screen, came clean about money, lies, and murder.
In April 2017, Preston Taylor pleaded guilty to first-degree robbery, second-degree conspiracy to commit robbery, and second-degree disturbing or desecrating human remains, and he agreed to testify against Liam at his trial. Almost 2 years to the day since Sarah was last seen, Liam McAtasney's trial started. Monmouth County prosecutors had only ever tried one case before without a body, so there was nervous energy as the trial started. Liam had already fired his original lawyer, and his new one was pushing to keep his taped confession out of court. His argument was that if there was no body, there was no cause or time of death, and quite frankly, no way of proving anything. The taped confession was huge, but Liam had an excuse. A ridiculous story that Liam's confession to Anthony was simply an attempt to get into one of his films, and it was all a poorly worded audition that Anthony had used to frame him. However, their attempts to prevent the tape from being shown proved fruitless, and Anthony Curry was also allowed to testify. Liam didn't speak in court at all, or testify in his own defence. Along with all of the evidence in the recording and just how graphic and specific Liam had been, Preston also testified.
Specifically decided that Liam was strangling. Any other way, any type of weapon would have been too messy, left a whole lot of evidence. And then as far as what to do with her after she was dead, we talked about a couple of plans, burying her down at the campsite that Liam's dad owns, just leaving her at the house, and then ultimately we decided that the best way to go about it would be to make it look like a suicide.
Now there's a verdict in the case of a New Jersey man accused of killing his high school friend for her inheritance. He's been found guilty.
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty. Liam McAtasney was found guilty on 7 counts, including first-degree murder, felony murder, and robbery. As the verdict was read out, he started crying, something prosecutors said was completely for show. It was all fake, and he cared about nothing but himself. That so much was obvious. Before the sentencing, it would have been Sarah's 22nd birthday, and Michael took some balloons and flowers to the bridge for her.
The most important thing is to get justice for Sarah. She was a great kid and never should have ended like this. Thank everybody. Thank you.
Breaking news in Freehold, New Jersey, where a 21-year-old man has just been sentenced to life in prison.
The now 21-year-old was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Preston Taylor was later sentenced to 18 years in prison and is eligible for parole in 2032. Preston said, "So many things about this scenario I wish I could take back. I should have known better and done something to stop this, and I wish more than anything I had." But the judge said he was just as culpable and did everything apart from strangle her. Both of them appealed their sentences, but both were told it was a no. The fact that Liam could have plotted to do this to one of his so-called best friends of almost 15 years, and Preston, who went along with everything, all over some money, was frightening. Megan, Liam's mum, said she still does not believe her son would do this, saying he loved and adored Sarah and there was not a single part of her that ever thought he had anything to do with what happened. It should also be noted that without the help of Anthony securing that confession, they might not have ever known what happened, let alone got a conviction. Would Liam ever have confided in anyone else apart from Preston? Would the truth have ever come out? Police think probably not. Anthony said, "I'll live with this stuff for the rest of my life. Back then he was a great friend, one of my best friends. He'd give you the shirt off his back. Now he's dead. He's a killer. If somebody is capable of doing that, he could try to hurt my family or somebody I knew. You don't believe somebody would do something like that. So it's heartbreaking in a sense. Somebody who's your good friend, you don't think they would do something like that. It was an innocent person." It really is one of the most senseless and shocking cases. The fact she had died at the hands of one of her closest and most trusted friends is awful in and of itself, but thinking about just how long and painful that half an hour would have felt makes it all the more agonising. When Liam and Preston heard about her inheritance, it seemed they instantly turned on her, viewing their friend as nothing more than financial gain. They went to the most extreme lengths for greed, and the only thing that Liam was even remotely upset about was the fact it wasn't as much money as he had hoped for. They both spent 2 months calculating every single move to continue to cover up her murder, joining in with the searches and supporting Sarah's family at the same time. Despite the searches for Sarah, her remains have never been found and probably never will be. An expert said that her body would likely have been swept out to sea in less than an hour, and within a day, she would have been miles away into the Atlantic Ocean. Her community continues to remember her as she was such an involved and big part of so many lives. Her old school started a scholarship in her honour. They host charity football games where money can be raised for the scholarship, which is awarded to one art student each year. Sarah Stern was well on her way to achieving some amazing things. It was her and Buddy against the world, and she was ready for fresh starts in new places. In her mind, she would be moving to Canada to pursue art with her best friend Liam, and how sad that story now is to think about. Her friends said her incredible talent when it came to art should be her legacy. She should be remembered as an amazing artist and the kind-hearted, loyal and positive person she was. For Michael to have lost his wife and then his daughter in the space of just a few years, the heartbreak and sadness he must live with is hard to imagine. He said that when he heard Sarah had been killed and dumped by her best friends, people he knew so well, nothing made sense anymore, and it has left his world empty and without trust. He said, "My life has been on hold. You never know what might trigger a thought of Sarah. I have a huge hole in my heart, and nothing can ever make it whole." For those of you that like to listen on the go, we now have our episodes in podcast form, and you can now find this via the link in our description box or by searching Truly Criminal Podcast on your podcasting platforms. Clear Lake City, Texas. In May 2003, Tiffany Rowell and Rachel Colorutis, among many other people, proudly graduated from their high school. They were entering the next stage of their lives and had many summer plans with friends and family. Tiffany was off to become a social worker, and Rachel was thinking of joining the military. Tiffany's boyfriend of 3 years, Marcus, also had a place at college, and his cousin Adelbert, who had recently moved to Clear Lake for a fresh start, had big plans too. After Tiffany's mother had died, her father remarried and moved out of the area. Tiffany stayed in the house so she didn't have to change schools, so close to graduation. The next month and a half involved a lot of parties at Tiffany's, holding down jobs, saving up for college, and spending as much of the summer together as possible before they all went their separate ways for a while. Late afternoon, July 18th, 2003. Police received a call from 2 neighbours who had gone to visit Tiffany. They had walked into her house and found a traumatising scene, one that no one could have predicted.
It's emergency. Got a call for 4 people dead. Possibly 4 victims have been shot.
4 people lay dead. The floor and walls were covered in blood, and it was obvious that they had all been deceased for several hours already. It was a shocking sight for even the most tenured of police officers. The victims were 18-year-olds Tiffany Rowell and Rachel Colorutis, Tiffany's boyfriend, 19-year-old Marcus Priscilla, and Marcus's cousin, 21-year-old Adelbert Sanchez. Tiffany, Marcus, and Adelbert had all been shot to death, and although Rachel had been shot multiple times, she had died of blunt force trauma to her head, and her skull was completely shattered. There was no forced entry. The TV was still blaring, and the way the group had been found indicated it was a total ambush that had happened in a mere matter of seconds. Rachel was found on the floor with her hand near her phone. She had managed to hit the 911 buttons to try and call for help, but before any call could go through, she was hit over the head, likely with a gun, and died. There was a clump of hair in her right hand, and she had been shot at least 12 times. Tiffany and Adelbert were on the recliners, their legs stretched out while they had been relaxing watching television, and Marcus was found behind the seats on the floor. Over 40 bullets had been fired in the house, and there was a mixture of 2 different shell casings. No guns were found at the scene, but police could tell that one was a 9mm and one was a .38 caliber, so investigators felt confident they were looking for at least 2 people involved, maybe even more. As the media got hold of the story and news began to spread, Rachel's father George recognised the address on television and headed straight over with his wife. The cameras picked up the heartbreaking moment. He pleaded with the police to let him in, but as it was now a crime scene, it was simply not allowed.
Sir, step behind that white line and go to jail right now. All right? Please. Please, man. I know. Please. Let me start you off.
They both collapsed to the ground, waiting for someone to tell them something, but knowing deep down they wouldn't see their daughter alive again. It was disturbing and shocking that something like this could happen in broad daylight, in a neighbourhood where very little went on. Former classmates of Tiffany said that her home had quickly become known as a party house, with drinking and drugs, and often lots of people coming in and out, especially now that it was summer break. So they wondered if maybe an alcohol or drug-fueled party had become really out of control. That's not what this particular day had been. The 4 were the closest of friends, and for all intents and purposes, it had just been a very casual afternoon for them, watching television and eating food. Friends, students and neighbours gathered together for vigils, and a sense of unease hovered over everyone. "18-year-old Tiffany always had the biggest smile on her face. As well as wanting to go into social work, she was a talented actress and loved any chance to perform. Rachel Colorutis also loved the arts and creative writing and was very popular in school due to her kind nature. People said that she too was always smiling, happy, and fun to be around. Marcus's stepfather said Marcus loved nothing more than working on his car and spending time with his family and Tiffany. He had been finishing a course for an automotive technology certificate and wanted to pursue a business degree. His cousin Adelbert had moved to Clear Lake to get away from violence on the north side, and had only been there for a couple of weeks before he was killed. He loved making music and planned to go to college to study computer technology. People could not believe that something this brutal could happen to them, and this seemingly random crime had rattled the community. Sadly, there really were no witnesses. No one had heard any gunshots. The houses were very separated, and police said lots of people had their air conditioning and fans on, which could have blocked out the noise. But a couple living nearby had seen something they thought might be relevant. They had seen a very young man and a woman walking down the street at about 2:30 p.m. that day, and to the best of their knowledge, they hadn't seen them before. They were dressed all in black. The woman was wearing a bandana, carrying a big black bag, and the neighbours described her as very pretty with big eyes. The witnesses gave the best description they could to the renowned forensic artist, Lois Gibson, who worked with what they could remember, putting together a potential profile. But whether these people were in any way linked was really unclear. Just 2 hours later, Lois had completed the sketches. George, Rachel's father, started working non-stop to try and raise money so they could afford to put the sketches out on billboards, and spent most of his time going door to door handing out flyers. Early on, rumours began to swirl that Marcus had been involved in dealing drugs, and maybe this was behind the ambush. It was also alleged that Marcus's family had connections to the Mexican mafia, and perhaps the other three had been collateral damage to a completely unrelated thing. A close friend of Tiffany's said, "I know Marcus was messed up with some bad people," but Marcus's aunt said he struggled, but he succeeded. No matter how hard he was trying, he was doing the best to do good. One detective said they were all very young, very immature, and on their own for the first time. The four may have exercised bad judgment at times, but certainly didn't deserve what happened to them. Officers simply couldn't find anything to solidify the claims about the mafia, and this theory was eventually ruled out. Police did wonder, however, if drugs were involved somehow, but they just didn't have anything yet that pointed to that, as both drugs and cash were found at the scene in plain view. So why hadn't they been stolen? The attack had been so ruthless and felt so personal, police then started to wonder if it was someone close to the group. Amongst her multiple shots, Rachel had been shot in the crotch area, and psychiatrists wondered if this was a sign of sexual envy or jealousy. But they were ruling people out at a rapid speed, rather than adding any suspects to the list. There was simply no one they could link to the group that would have any motive to do this. Time was slowly ticking by, and investigators had no more than they did when they first started. As the weeks turned into months, the months soon turned into years. Their confidence in catching whoever was responsible was dwindling. Fast forward to the summer of 2006, almost 3 years to the day after the shootings. After following leads that went nowhere and interviewing hundreds of people, police finally had a breakthrough. An anonymous tip came in via Crime Stoppers. The person on the end of the phone said they had seen the billboard and gave the police 2 names. The first was Christine Paolilla, and the second was Chris. The tipster had met Christine in rehab as she was battling a heroin addiction. She had recently split from this mystery man called Chris and was seemingly trying to turn her life around. While in rehab, she made a comment about her ex-boyfriend shooting up a house and killing a group of people, and she had also participated. He didn't know if the story was true or if it was the drugs talking, but after seeing the billboard for himself, he decided to call in. A look into the name Christine Paolilla told the police a lot. It turned out that Christine had gone to Clear Lake High School alongside Tiffany and Rachel, and the connections started to be made. Those in Christine's life said that she had had a tough time in school and was subjected to relentless bullying and attacks from classmates. Her mother and stepfather said that she had been diagnosed with alopecia when she was very young and began wearing wigs, which were frequently ripped off her head by other students. Her mom, Laurie, said she had poor vision, so she had what I guess most folks would know as Coke bottle glasses. This, as well as her wearing wigs, meant she faced ridicule on a daily basis. Her mother said that one day Christine came home from school and said, "Mom, I made 2 new friends who are the sweetest girls I ever met, Rachel and Tiffany." None other than Rachel Colorutis and Tiffany Rowell. People said that the two almost took Christine under their wings, forming a genuine and tight friendship. Rachel and Tiffany started looking out for her, trying their best to protect her from the bullying. Christine's mom said she couldn't speak highly enough about them, how much fun they were, how loving they were, how they had so much fun. Every minute they spent together was lively and fun, and they laughed all the time, and I saw such a change in her personality. Rachel's father also knew of Christine and said Rachel was the kind of person that always looked out for the underdog, always tried to help others. Rachel even kept a photo of Christine in her purse. On the back of the picture, Christine had written, "Damn, we've had some crazy memories. I love you." The 3 teens would often write notes back and forth to each other in class, and Laurie recalled that Christine trusted them both so much she felt okay without the wig on, which is not something she did with many of her friends. The trio would spend hours after school doing each other's makeup and trying on different wigs, having fun, but also making Christine feel comfortable and confident. The girls pushed Christine to try new things and find her creativity, and with this, Christine's confidence began to grow, and she was really coming into her own. She got a huge boost when she was voted Miss Irresistible by the student body at Clear Lake High School. She finally felt like she was leaving her past behind. Christine soon met Chris Snyder. He was 2 years older than her, and the pair struck up a friendship. Laurie said she immediately disapproved of this, but said her daughter wouldn't hear anything bad said about him. Chris ended up serving time for armed robbery, and when he got out, he went straight back to Christine, who was now 16 years old. Christine said that she felt bad because nobody wanted to be associated with him, and knowing how this felt, she stuck by him. They soon became romantically involved, and Christine had become more and more distant from her family. Laurie said Christine clung on to him for reasons she didn't understand, despite him often joining in with the bullying. Chris was using a lot of drugs at the time, and before long, so was Christine. Her parents spoke to lawyers and the police, even trying to get a restraining order against him, but Christine was now almost 18 years old and was making her own decisions. Her stepfather said she felt she was going to be able to fix him, no matter what he did. But others said that the toxicity came from both of them, with people often seeing Christine hitting him and shouting and fighting in public. Although this relationship was already on a downward spiral, 2 people that seemed to be constantly positive and have good energy in her life were Rachel and Tiffany, who stayed just as close to her throughout her relationship with Chris. On the day the group were found dead, Laurie said Christine had come home in floods of tears, crying through most of the night. She said she was so upset she couldn't attend their funerals. So, with the police knowing all of this, it begged the question, why would someone that was so close to the victims do something like that? How could Christine possibly have been involved? The only person that could answer that question was her, and officers started searching for Christine Paolilla and Chris Snyder. The hunt for Chris proved harder as he was not living at his last known address. But, thanks to ATM and bank records, Christine and her husband Justin were located. They were hauled up in a San Antonio motel, having lived there for almost a year. When officers announced themselves and entered, they walked into what they described as one of the most disgusting things they had ever seen. Used needles, rubbish, food, vomit, and drugs littered the floor. Blood and bodily fluids covered the walls and furniture. They said the smell was unlike anything, and the state of Christine and Justin was quite shocking. Wearing blood-stained clothes and covered in track marks, just before noon on July 19, 2006, Christine Paolilla was placed under arrest. Police said it was clear that the pair were so deeply in their addictions, it was likely a matter of time before they died. For the last 9 months they had been living in the same room, spending every bit of Christine's inheritance money on drugs. Christine told police she was living off of crackers and spending around $500 a day on heroin, but this amount sometimes reached over $1,000. Justin said Christine hadn't left the room once. Christine's police interview began just before 3 p.m, and over the next few hours, the detective begged her to tell the truth.
I'd like to be able to understand why, okay? And why would be helpful if you would give us some insight to what's going on.
She admitted to driving Chris to the home that day, but said the murders were all his idea. The plan was to buy drugs from someone inside. Christine said she waited outside in the car before they both drove away.
Take me over to your homegirl's house or whatever, and I'm gonna see if Marcus is there.
Okay.
He got in the car and I drove off.
Okay.
And like I saw him like walking in the opposite direction of their house. And he was like, just drive. And he pulled out like a bag of drugs from his pocket. I was just like, like, damn, I thought like he hooked him up like, like pretty good. But then I was like, I was like, where, like, I knew he didn't have enough money for what was there. And like, he was just like, I jacked that fool. I started like freaking out. I was, cause, they knew me. The girls, they were my good friends, and I couldn't believe, like,
that he jacked
them. Like, that's what I knew at that point.
But when Chris said he had forgot something, the pair went back. She initially said that again she stayed outside, hearing no gunshots and seeing nothing wrong. She said she only realised something had happened when he came out holding a gun.
You gotta go back. We gotta go back. It's like I just forgot something. And I was thinking, why would you want to go back when you just jacked these people? When you just, like, stole from them. And I started to, like, go down their road, and then he ran into the house.
The house meaning Tiffany and Marcus's house?
He came running out with the gun, one of the guns in his hand. I didn't hear any gunshots or anything.
Okay.
After this happened, they drove off, and she clocked in to start her shift at Walgreens just 30 minutes later.
I was like, I finally said, I need to go to work.
What did he say, Christine? That he shot them? I'd be freaking out. He would have told you what went on. What did he say? What do you mean he shot them?
But the police weren't convinced that this was down to just Chris. Neither were the experts that had analysed the crime scene. They were still standing by their theory that this was a jealous rage or something to do with sexual envy on Christine's part. Although Rachel and Tiffany had befriended Christine, it was still entirely possible that maybe she didn't believe they were being genuine and wanted to punish them. Or her anger at being treated so badly in school had poured over and she had taken it out on them.
Now, whether you do it on your own, okay, or whether he forces you, you're in that house because do you love your husband?
I know I wasn't in the house.
Listen to me. Do you love your husband?
I love him very much.
You love him very much. Okay. Your husband gives exact details of what happens. Okay? Of exact details. You, in another conversation, okay, give exact details to the person of a distinct event that takes place when the shot is fired. That one of them doesn't even, the quote is, one of them didn't even move off the couch. You know specific details of what happened. Either he pours his heart out to you, all right, when you're leaving there, or you're there.
Officers were trying to get as much information out of her as they could, but as the interview drew to a close, Christine started to grow weaker and more sick. She was transported to Santa Rosa Hospital, where she informed doctors that she was used to taking heroin every 10 to 15 minutes, and that she hadn't had any since that morning. After she had been given methadone and morphine, they carried on the interviews inside the hospital, but Christine was still pointing the finger at Chris. She was then put on a plane and flown out to Houston before being placed in a jail cell. A final videotaped interview commenced just before midnight. Her story had now changed.
So, the gun was in your hand, and what was he telling you? 1, 2, 3?
He was holding on to it, too.
Okay, like on top of your hand or something?
Yes, like,
Yeah, like that.
I couldn't even tell you how it was, like, but that one that like I was scared and I was like crimping, and then I had made the gun go off, not purposely though, but like it went to the back of the room because I was just like screaming, just like shaking.
So somehow you pulled the trigger?
Yes.
Okay. How many times do you think it went off in your hand?
A million times.
It went off a bunch in your hand?
It felt like a million times. Like even like the first time, it felt like a million times.
So you were pulling the trigger somehow?
No. Like it's like he has his hand, and my hand was like, I couldn't even tell you how. Like it was.
Okay.
But it was his force that was making
it go off.
Yes.
Okay.
She then said she watched in horror as Chris beat Rachel to death, and according to Christine, he had threatened to do the same thing to her and her family if she told anyone what had happened that night.
You know, I was screaming and like, you know, and just like, you know, I kept trying to like, you know, like pull away, but I couldn't because I felt like just like spaghetti almost. I'm trying to remember like how this happened because I remember it was just like, it was so quick. Like I heard like other like shots like going off.
From his gun, I guess?
I don't know what kind of.
There wasn't a third person shooting.
No.
Okay.
It's just everything was like, everything got like, you know, like quiet, like, but you know how like in the movie Saving Private Ryan you can hear like shooting, but like you can't hear like anything else.
Police were satisfied that she had finally, at least, placed herself at the scene. They were still looking for Chris and visited his last known address, his parents' house. They told his family that there was a warrant out for his arrest. They began a search of the property. In his father's bedroom was a little safe, which contained 2 guns. Both matched the 2 types that they were looking for. But by this point, no one had seen Chris in over a week. Detectives looked at his MySpace page and phone records, which led them to Greenville, South Carolina, but Chris had already learned about the manhunt before police could even find him. Testing the guns soon linked them back to the crime scene, but before they could place Chris under arrest, his decomposing body was found in some woods. He had taken an overdose of pills. It is thought that someone had tipped him off about the pending arrest, and he had taken his own life before they could find him. There was now only one person left to talk to, and that was Christine's husband, Justin. He said that Christine had inherited some money after her father passed away, and the couple had bought a small condo with it. Soon after they started living together, a news story about the anniversary of the unsolved murders came out. Christine called Justin in to watch, asking if the billboard picture looked like her. He said Christine broke down and admitted to going to the house to steal money and drugs. She said she was a willing participant, and when Chris started shooting, she didn't hesitate to join in too. Justin also said that Christine had told him that it was her who beat Rachel to death with the gun, not Chris. He said that Christine told him Rachel was crying asking why over and over, but she didn't stop until she was sure Rachel was dead. Justin said he was completely shocked and scared, but the couple moved out of the condo and went on the run. It later turned out that the anonymous tip that had been made to Crime Stoppers was actually Justin himself. Christine Paolilla was charged with first-degree murder, and she entered a plea of not guilty. In a pre-trial hearing, Christine's defense team moved to suppress all 3 recorded statements. Although she had been advised of her Fifth Amendment rights before each interview, they argued that her statements were technically involuntary because of the medication she had taken and because she was suffering from opioid withdrawal. But this motion was denied, and the court later said Christine was lucid and capable of understanding the warnings given to her and the nature of her statements. A couple of years later, the now 22-year-old's trial got underway. The defense advised that Christine did not testify. They showed her confession tapes, reiterating Christine's statement, saying that it was Chris that had killed the group, while she hid. The jurors watched her videotape statement, in which she told police that Chris was responsible for everything, and that she was afraid of him. But the prosecution fired back, saying, over 1,100 calls are made from her to him, and him to her. If you are so deathly afraid of someone, what are you doing on the phone with them for over 1,000 phone calls? Dr. George Glass, a psychiatrist testifying for the defense, said that her heroin addiction could not be overlooked. She was in withdrawal at the time she spoke to the police and was saying anything she could to get drugs to relieve the pain. Her lawyer said, she's upset. She totally understands the grief of the families, her friends, the ones who were killed. She only wishes they could understand that she didn't want any of it to happen, but she understands their grief. Rachel's mother disagreed and said, I couldn't take my eyes off her. I really hoped to see something in her eyes in the way of remorse, and it was unbelievable. You know, she never shed a tear unless it was for herself. The prosecution said there was plenty that pointed towards her being involved directly, and the fact that she had started her shift at work just half an hour after the ordeal, instead of phoning the police, showed that she was no victim. Her statements were inconsistent, and she had already admitted to 2 people, one of which was her husband, that she had actively taken part of her own accord. The prosecution called her denials and blaming everything on Chris a tired and pathetic tactic. Their star witness was actually her husband Justin, but the defense argued that Justin's account could not be trusted. They said he was focused purely on money, staying with Christine for her inheritance, and cashing in on the Crime Stoppers reward by making up a lie. But the jury disagreed. After just 3 hours of deliberations, Christine Paolilla was found guilty. She was 17 at the time of the murders, which meant she would not face the death penalty. She was, however, sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 40 years to serve. She will be eligible for parole in 2046, when she will be 60 years old. More than 5 years after the murders back in July 2003, the families of the victims said that they felt the guilty verdict would finally allow them to begin moving on with their lives. Christine has filed many appeals since her conviction, but all of them have been denied. Houston Police Sergeant Brian Harris said that he believes that Christine still does not own her part in the crime. For her to truly come to grips with what she has done, she has to acknowledge that there's a darkness in her soul, he said. Christine's stepfather Thomas said, I'm very sorry for these families and their loss. The guy who did this is dead. He was very, very bad. He was a predator. My daughter is paying for someone else's sins. My daughter doesn't deserve this. My daughter is a victim too. It's hard to know exactly what happened that fateful afternoon, and why it did. Police say there were 6 people at the scene, 5 of them are now dead, and 1 of them isn't talking. So with this, it is likely that the full truth will never be fully known. The aftermath of that awful day is still widely felt. with Rachel's father calling it an earthquake for the families and community. Marcus's stepfather said, "Our lives are very different now. We see things differently than before, and we know that we will never again feel the sense of hope that we used to feel."